Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from Washington, D.C. I'm Simon Marks and these are the top headlines of the day. Ukraine's energy operator claims that radioactive substances could be released from the Chernobyl nuclear power plant because it cannot cool spent nuclear fuel after its power connection was severed. The European Union is adding 146 members of Russia's upper house of parliament and 14 Kremlin-linked oligarchs and their relatives to its sanctions list over Moscow's war in Ukraine. The Kremlin says that the onslaught of American sanctions against Russia constitutes an economic war against Moscow. US Vice President Kamala Harris is en route to Poland after Washington rejected Warsaw's proposal to ship Soviet-era fighter jets to assist the Ukrainians as they try to resist Russia's advance. And European equities surge on bargain hunting, but analysts warn that the temporary bounce will not last due to fallout from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. US Vice President Kamala Harris has found herself in the middle of an unexpected diplomatic row over fighter jets. She left Washington an hour ago, bound for Warsaw, a trip that has now become substantially more complicated after the Pentagon described Poland's offer as untenable. In a rare moment of disharmony between the two NATO allies, the United States rejected Warsaw's plan to send MiG-29 fighters to Ukraine via a US airbase in Germany. The Biden administration says that the proposal raises serious concerns for the entire NATO alliance. Here's what the plan entailed. MiG-29s are Russian-made Soviet-era fighter jets. Poland would send them to the US airbase at Ramstein in Germany, from where they would then be shipped onwards to Ukraine so the jets could replenish Ukraine's air force and assist in the battle against the Russians. The Polish Foreign Ministry urged other members of the NATO alliance with MiG fighters to do the same, and the Poles said they would then receive replacement fighter jets from the US to backfill the planes sent to Ukraine.
We were always emphasizing that Poland is not party to this war and NATO is not party to this war. This is why any decisions of delivering offensive weapon has to be taken by the entire NATO on a unanimous basis. And this is why we are ready to give all of our fleet of jet fighters to Ramstein, but we are not ready to make any moves on our own because, as I said, we are not party to this war.
At the moment, Ukraine's air force consists of old MiG-29 and Sukhoi 27 jets. These are the only two planes Ukrainian pilots know how to fly immediately without additional training. But the Pentagon says that the prospects of flying combat aircraft from NATO territory into the war zone raises serious concerns and could put the alliance on the slippery slope to conflict with Russia. It says that there is no substantive rationale behind the Polish proposal. US officials claimed they were surprised by Poland's offer, and the Biden administration is now pinning hopes on Vice President Kamala Harris, trusting that she can smooth things over when she gets to Poland and then later heads to Romania. Her trip will highlight unity among the United States and its allies in Europe in the face of Russian aggression, and she'll spend the rest of this week on the road for meetings with leaders in both countries. Targeting what he called the main artery of Russia's economy, President Biden yesterday announced a ban on all US imports of Russian oil. Russia has reacted today, saying it too is working on a broad range of sanctions that would hit the West's most sensitive areas.
Today I'm announcing the United States is targeting the main artery of Russia's economy. We're banning all imports of Russian oil and gas and energy. That means Russian oil will no longer be acceptable at U.S. ports, and the American people will deal another powerful blow to Putin's war machine.
The US move is a blow to Russia, one of the biggest exporters of oil and natural gas in the world. The move is also likely to impact Western consumers. But Joe Biden's decision is largely symbolic. The United States relies very little on Russian energy. The country's crude represented less than 2% of all US oil imports in December. Overall, Russian crude and petroleum products made up just about 5% of US imports at the end of 2021. Following the US move, the UK also announced plans to phase out Russian oil imports by the end of this year. Britain's Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng said that this transition will give the market, businesses and supply chains more than enough time to replace Russian imports. Russian oil makes up 8% of UK demand. The oil sanction does not apply to Russian natural gas, which accounts for some 4% of Britain's supply. But Kwarteng said he was exploring options to end that altogether. The European Union, which is heavily dependent on Russian gas, says it plans to cut imports by 2/3 and end its reliance on Russian supplies of fuel well before 2030. Russia supplies around 40% of the bloc's natural gas. Gas flows to Europe have so far been steady since the invasion. However, Moscow on Monday warned that Western sanctions on Russian oil could prompt it to close a major gas pipeline to Europe. And WION's correspondent Susan Tehrani is joining us live from New York. Susan, let's start with Kamala Harris's trip to Poland and Romania. Suddenly, it's a more complicated trip than she was anticipating.
Yes, it is. It was supposed to be a trip to raise the morale and unity between NATO member allies. And of course, the United States does have 9,000 U.S. troops stationed in Poland, 4,500 service members recently being deployed there in recent weeks because of the Russian war with Ukraine and sort of the possibility that Vladimir Putin would have further ambitions beyond Ukraine. And now we see this debacle happening and somewhat of a misunderstanding, if you may, between Poland and the United States, which both are NATO countries, and it seems that they seem to be passing this hot potato back and forth between one another with these MiG fighter jets. On the one hand, you know, as I mentioned, they're both NATO member states, so it shouldn't really matter which of them would deliver these fighter jets to Ukraine. But on the other hand, you can see the sensitivity and nuance of the situation when dealing with Russia, that they don't want to be the ones deliberately engaging and delivering these jets to Ukraine directly on their part. So we'll have to wait and see if Kamala Harris can work her foreign policy magic and come up with a solution to this debacle that the two sides are facing. But the Ukrainians really are in need, and there are two schools of thought to this. First of all, whether or not Ukraine really needs fighter jets at this point. And the other being that, NATO should get its act together and work united on a united front to help Ukraine on all fronts possible.
And Susan, let's talk about Joe Biden's ban on U.S. oil imports. He was at pains yesterday to say to the American public that they're going to need to be ready to pay a price for defending Ukrainian democracy. We have seen opinion polls in the last week that show a clear majority of Americans, almost 3/4 of them, backing the idea of banning Russian oil imports. But we don't know how long they're prepared to tolerate pain at the pumps.
Overwhelming majority, according to a recent poll, if I'm not mistaken, 71% was the last one that I saw, of Americans do back the fact that banning Russian oil is the right thing to do. However, the problem is when we go further to see these polls on how the questions are being asked is how to move forward and how to really replace that Russian oil, and that's where the complications come in. On the one hand, you have many within the president's own party and Republicans saying that the answer is literally under America's own feet. You can really become energy independent, bring down the price of oil by opening up fossil fuel production here in the U.S. right away. It would be a lot faster. It would bring the price of gas down. America can produce its own oil without importing oil from, by the way, Russia is a very small portion of imports in the United States. The majority is Canada, Mexico, and Saudi Arabia at this point. And now the United States is looking to countries like Venezuela and calling for outputs more from Saudi Arabia and possibly a nuclear deal with Iran. But it would be faster to produce here in the United States. So a lot of that poll that we're seeing, Americans are for producing their own oil here in the United States as opposed to getting it from Russia. That's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is the president is not being clear that when their gas prices go up, when he says that Americans need to pay a price, that for how long and at what cost. When these prices go up, then commodities go up. Then when these sanctions are being imposed, and despite the fact that a small portion of Russian oil is being imported in the United States, a lot of companies are now privately have an aversion of working with Russia regardless. So you're going to see a lot of unemployment go up because of these companies stopping to work with Russia as well. So it's going to have a ripple effect on the economy as well. And a lot of Democrats, even within the White House, are privately concerned that the path that the president is taking, although it's the right path in banning Russian oil, it hopes to set an example for the rest of the world in cutting off Russia's one source economy from the rest of the world. How it's being replaced and the effects it's going to have ultimately because of the dire economic effects it's going to have here in the United States, ultimately how it's going to affect the Democratic Party moving into the 2022 presidential elections. Midterm elections is a cause for concern. So yes, the overwhelming majority of Americans do support that, but how it's being replaced is the main debate right now.
All sorts of complexities ahead. WION's US correspondent Susan Tehrani live for us today from the streets of New York City. Now, speaking about oil, we learnt last night that the leaders of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates are refusing to talk to President Joe Biden. Those refusals to engage in phone calls with President Biden have occurred over recent weeks. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that their rejection of the president's overtures come just as he's trying to contain a surge in oil prices amid the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The newspaper reports that Saudi and Emirati leaders are becoming more and more unavailable to the US president, and their officials are growing more critical of US policy in the Gulf. Biden has been trying to reach out to Gulf nations that have the capacity to pump more oil, which in turn can ease supply fears. On February the 9th, Biden spoke with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's father, King Salman. They highlighted the partnership that the two countries share. But both Saudi and Emirati leaders spoke to Russian President Vladimir Putin only last week. They also had a phone conversation with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. For the first time in years, the US has opened diplomatic channels with Venezuela, a Russian ally. A US delegation met with Venezuelan government officials over the weekend in Caracas to hold discussions on energy supplies and the possible alleviation of existing US sanctions against Venezuela. It comes as Washington continues to seek ways to reduce its imports of Russian oil without harming US consumers while maintaining a global supply.
Acciones, estoy seguro que la nueva época que se ha abierto también.
Temas de interés. Examen. Sí. Y
just hours after President Biden's oil ban was announced, major global brands followed suit and said they were going to isolate Russia over its invasion of Ukraine. McDonald's and Starbucks are shutting their restaurants and cafes across Russia's 11 time zones. Coca-Cola is suspending its operations, and PepsiCo is also pulling some products from the country. McDonald's announced it is temporarily suspending operations at all 847 of its restaurants in Russia, increasing pressure on other global brands to pause their operations in the country as well. The closure of the McDonald's restaurants will carry symbolic importance in Russia. The first McDonald's opened in the heart of Moscow, Pushkin Square, back in 1990. And became an iconic symbol of flourishing American capitalism and new ties with the former Soviet Union as the former Soviet Union collapsed. McDonald's said it would continue to pay salaries to its 62,000 employees in Russia.
I think that the immediate message that McDonald's is sending with this move today is that they're not able to continue operating in Russia, and that is really something that makes it impossible to continue operations there. But I think the bigger symbolic gesture here is that when McDonald's moved into the Soviet Union, it was part of a message of opening up and building trust and cooperation between Russia and the West. And now those avenues have all been closed off.
Starbucks, too, has followed suit and has suspended all its business activities in Russia, including store operations and support staff, including nearly 2,000 employees in Russia. They're also halting all their shipments to the country. Next in line, Coca-Cola. They're also suspending all their business in Russia. The company stated that it will monitor the situation and its operations as things change. A host of major global companies have now suspended operations in Russia, further isolating the country's economy. This includes companies offering payment services and other corporates from a wide array of sectors: accounting, aviation, digital streaming, high-tech, automobile, retail, luxury goods, and energy. And now onto some news from the world of iPhone maker Apple has announced its new lineup of products for 2024. This follows a crippling global chip shortage that affected the tech industry at large. Our next report gets you all the details.
Apple's low-end iPhone is getting an upgrade, along with a few other products. Apple on Tuesday added 5G connectivity to its low-cost iPhone SE and iPad Air, and introduced a faster chip for a new desktop, a high point in Apple's move to power its devices with microprocessors designed in-house. Apple CEO Tim Cook.
The new iPhone SE brings the advanced features and exceptional performance of A15 to our most affordable iPhone. It's going to be great for existing iPhone users who want a highly capable and compact iPhone, and for new users who want to experience iPhone for the first time.
Apple slightly hiked the price on the iPhone SE to $429 from $399 for the previous model. The new iPhone starts shipping March 18th. The iPhone SE comes with an A15 Bionic chip, which Apple says is the fastest among competition. Apple also introduced a new monitor, the Studio Display, which can be paired with any Mac, including the MacBook Air and MacBook Pro models. That is priced at $1,599. And the iPad Air also got an upgrade, with Apple's M1 chip that was developed for laptops. The company, which has been broadening its services and other products, also said its Apple TV Plus product would begin showing Major League Baseball games on Friday nights. The weekly doubleheader will be available in 8 countries. Now, it just needs the baseball season to actually start.
Heaps of discarded batteries pile up in the empty landfills of Gaza, posing health risks to the residing Palestinians in the enclave. With no one to attend to these battery cells, they rust in the open and emit harmful chemicals.
Virtually every household in Gaza relies on batteries to keep their home running. This is a result of years of chronic power crisis in the region. With no stable source of power supply, residents have resorted to alternate means such as battery cells to generate electricity.
The severe shortage in the energy sector in Gaza has led citizens to use alternative means, using batteries to generate power, especially electricity in households, which led to the multiplication of numbers of batteries in the Gaza Strip.
Batteries are an essential power source in Gaza, where public electricity supply is practically nil. These batteries fuel everything from lights to internet routers to solar panels. But there's a major problem. With more and more batteries coming into use, more and more are also getting discarded, which is resulting in a huge pile of used battery cells. Gaza's Environment Authority estimates that there are nearly 25,000 tons of old batteries piled up in this overcrowded enclave. With no proper disposal facilities, these battery cells are left to rust in the open landfills. These discarded cells then break and ooze toxic elements which contaminate the soil.
Batteries are composed of heavy metals that are toxic, such as lead, which constitutes 60% of a battery, in addition to cobalt and nickel. Some batteries also contain mercury, hence can cause serious damage to human health and the environment.
There are no recycling facilities in Gaza, and existing blockades imposed by Israel and Egypt prevent shipping the batteries to foreign countries. Adding to these woes, the ongoing power tussle between the Israeli government and the Hamas group is also making the situation worse for Palestinians living in this enclave. With decayed infrastructure and a crippling economy, the future continues to remain gloomy for Gaza's residents. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Finally today, in a bid to bring a stronger focus to a lack of female artist representation, a gallery in London is doing something unique. The House of Fine Art in Mayfair has launched an exhibition called The Divine, and it's bringing together the works of 12 female artists from 9 different countries. We're going to leave you with the visuals showing you their work. That's all for this edition of WION Live Broadcast from Washington, D.C. Back again, same time, same place tomorrow. Thanks for watching. WION World is One.
How many other galleries around are highlighting their female artists at the moment? Hoffa are making a real point about this, so I'm delighted to be here to represent the 12 female artists, and we have to keep doing it this time every year.
It's amazing to be here representing all these faceless and nameless women who didn't have the opportunity and the chance to express themselves and their talents. To be here for them, for me, they are my heroes.
This is right, Arab.